So the Patriots now have an offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, hired by the Patriots since the last time that we've talked to you. What do you make of that hiring? How did everything go down here in New England with Josh coming back?
Yeah, there were a few moving parts there. I do wonder if the Ben Johnson thing accelerated the Patriots at all, just because I think he might have been a consideration in Detroit to replace Ben Johnson. And if that had happened, then like now maybe you're scrambling a little bit more. So does that force the decision making? Maybe. Josh obviously has ties here and lives here, but he's also got two kids that go to school in the Midwest. He's from Cleveland, which isn't far from Detroit. So like I think there would have been some appeal if Dan Campbell wound up making that call. And there is some familiarity there too, in that like Ben Johnson's system is based off of Adam Gase's system, which is based off of the Patriots system.
Okay.
So Gase came
everybody
up,
viewed Ben
Gase
Johnson
and,
as this big West Coast guy.
No, but Gase and Josh were together in Denver. So like Gase sort of learned the Patriot offense under Josh in Denver. There were elements of that Gase brought with him everywhere he went.
Huh.
And Gase kind of was the guy that Ben's off, the bones of Ben's offense are off of Gase.
Wow. So
like I think that there would have been I think Detroit at least might have made some phone calls on that. And so I do wonder if that sped things up a little bit. I mean, look, like I would say this, I think it's a really good hire. And I do have some questions about it, but like we would start with the positive here. What's the positive to me is you probably aren't going to lose him after a year or two, which would be a concern with other guys. And I wouldn't have had a problem with bringing in a guy where that risk exists, because that's a good
thing. Yeah.
If the guy comes in and crushes it and he's gone in 2 years, you deal with that because now
champagne
you're
problems.
Yep.
Right. Now the quarterback's playing well, so your offensive coordinator job is really attractive.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, so I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Josh's system can be quarterback friendly. We've seen that, right? So we've seen it work for Mac when he was a rookie. They retrofitted it for Jacoby Brissett. You remember that. That was on the fly. They developed Jimmy Garoppolo in it. They developed Matt Castle in it. So there's history of people other than Brady developing in the offense as young players, right? I think the Cam thing's a little bit different just because they had to do things very, very differently.
Specifically for him.
Yeah, and Cam had been in the league for so long. You want my reservations?
I was going to say, let's get to the good stuff. Yeah, what are the questions when it comes to this hire?
Number one, like, I had somebody who's worked with both guys over the weekend question the personality fit. And so, like, I think that's something that Mike and Josh are going to have to work on. You know, I think they're both sort of alphas, and they both have very strong feelings on football. And so, like, yes. I do think that's something that's going to be on the two of them. You know what I mean? Like, that personality fit is going to be on the two of them. Because I do know people, and I wound up talking to a couple more after that did question, like, is the personality fit going to work? The other thing is the development of skill players outside of the quarterback. And that means how compatible is this offense going to be for young receivers? Try to come up with a young receiver that really worked here.
Malcolm Mitchell, that's it.
When Josh was the coordinator.
Malcolm Mitchell.
Malcolm Mitchell would probably be the answer.
It's
yeah.
the only one.
I mean, like Rookie. Almost always, like the Patriots,
fourth round pick.
It was almost always either guys taking forever to develop. Edelman, how long did it take him to develop into what he was? 5 years.
Almost let him walk out the door.
But
too,
you had Welker.
2013.
Right.
Yeah.
You had Welker to sort of. Yeah.
Welker came in from somewhere else. Amendola came in from somewhere else. Moss came in from somewhere else.
Yeah, it was usually veteran free agent signings or trades.
Even like
LaFell even came in.
Chris Hogan.
I mean, Brandon Lloyd. The guys that have generally worked here have been veteran players. So, like, that would be my question. Now, to that end, Josh spent a lot of time with college coaches over the last year, and I do think that, like, he's working towards addressing that. So, the time he spent specifically with college coaches, I think has given him a better understanding of where those guys are coming from. You know what I mean? Like, when he gets the 21, 22-year-old, like, what that kid's experience is, when you get a chance to meet with and spend time around college programs, you probably have a little bit of a better feel for what the kid's dealing with when he's coming into the NFL. And Josh never had the opportunity to do that because he never had a year off of coaching the way he did over the last year.
So you mentioned the personality fit. Do you think was this Mike Vrabel's hire, or do you think this was the Krafts in terms of bringing back someone that they're very familiar with in terms of the offense coordinator?
So I think if Mike Vrabel, if this was like a completely clean slate and he had his pick of anybody, he would have hired Arthur Smith. I think that probably would have been, if there was a way to get him out of Pittsburgh, and obviously that wasn't happening. And Arthur had I think a really good year, despite what some people say, based on like some of the things that he was able to accomplish with the limits they had at quarterback. I think he would have been. I think Arthur would have been a really good hire. Those two are very, very close and comfortable with each other. Since he wasn't available, I think Tommy Rees was another one that was, like, from my understanding, was real and something that he had looked at over the course of the last year. Obviously, that comes off the table.
Quickly, when it comes to Tommy Rees, though, wouldn't like New England be more attractive because of not only the quarterback, but you're also going to be the play caller?
Yeah, but here's
Cleveland?
the thing. No, but I think that there's like a little bit of code in coaching there, where it's like Mike could take Tommy Rees if he was creating a new opportunity, but when Kevin
is
already offering him that opportunity, you don't go in and
poach. Yeah.
And I think my understanding is Kevin gave me this quote. He called Kevin and Mike actually really wound up building a strong relationship. Kevin called called Mike Vrabel their human resource, in that he was able to be a resource in so many different ways. Yeah, he texted me that a couple weeks ago. Said it was the best way to describe what Mike did for them. So they have a really good relationship. So if you're Mike, I don't think you're going to go in and poach a guy that they badly want to keep there. So would he have liked Tommy Rees? Sure. But there is a little bit of a code.
Burn those bridges, yeah.
Yeah, like the same way I don't think Ben Johnson is going to go in and raid Dan Campbell's staff. You know what I mean? Like, even though he might really like certain guys in that staff, like there's going to be. And Bill Belichick and Nick Saban talked about this on the special that they had, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
So, and I know Mike and Josh have talked, and obviously they've got a lot of common roots. They spent 8 years together here. Now it wasn't coach to coach, so this is going to be different. And they're both from they probably grew up like, I don't know what the distance is, 15 minutes apart, like really, really close in that Akron-Canton area. So, I think it can work. It's just going to be a matter of like those two guys working out the personality stuff. And I think, like I said, like I don't think it's a perfect hire, but I think it's about as close to perfect as you are going to get, so long as they can work those things out.
Hey, last year, Gerard Mayo, famous quote, Alex Van Pelt, head coach of the offense. Is Mike Vrabel a guy that would be comfortable with, especially the resume that Josh brings to the table, saying, "Hey, you're head coach of the offense," in terms of that
that's like
personality stuff?
That's sort of the problem that I have with this. Is like the one thing is, I've seen this before. This is what like Jerry used to always do in Dallas. Is like, well, I'm going to put together an all-star staff, and I'm going to hire all these different people. We saw last year, like he dipped into his own connections with Mike Zimmer to hire him, and Zimmer coached for him for how many years in the 90s? And then,
ton.
Yeah, like so, like that is a question. Like I generally don't think that works. Where you're like, okay, like I'll just farm this out to you, and you handle this. Like, how many cases has that actually worked? Where it's like, this is like you're going to be the head coach of this. Like when I heard Gerard, I'll be honest, like I didn't say this at the time, but when I heard Gerard say that about AVP, it kind of made me cringe a little bit.
Yeah,
it's like
red flag.
We all did.
I mean, it's not because no, you're the head coach of the whole team, right? Like, so that's what I do, and I don't think Mike will make that mistake. Like, I don't think Mike's going to come in and be like, "Oh yeah, Josh, like you got those 25 guys over there. I'll be over here with no." Like, there's a reason why Mike spent so much time working with offensive players this year. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that part of it, I think looking at it that way would be wrong. And if that's the way they set it up, I'd be afraid that'd be doomed to fail.
Bert, this is the problem most people have with this, and the assumption that he's working for free.
Yeah.
That is not the case, right?
Well, they have to work through the offset, which that can be a complicated thing. Josh does have 3 years left on his Vegas deal because they gave him a 6-year deal, and it was a pretty massive contract, into 8 figures. So, whatever they have to come to a number that the league is going to approve, and basically the league rules read that it's got to be commensurate with what an offensive coordinator salary would be, which is why like there was all the funny business with titles over the years here when they would bring people in from other places, because if there's not
an offensive coordinator, then you don't have to pay an offensive coordinator. Yeah.
Well, no, if you have like somebody is like the special assistant to the head coach, there's not a pay scale for that. There is a pay scale for offensive coordinator.
So if you don't name one, then you get around it, right?
Right. So like if Josh McDaniels has the offensive coordinator title, you're going to have to pay him on a level that's commensurate, which obviously gives the Raiders some relief off of what they owe Josh.
But even if you name him offensive coordinator, you could pay in the low end of that scale versus top of the line, which
is generally what happens. Would be. And usually the guy who, usually the coach in this circumstance, doesn't care or even prefers to stick their old employer with the bill.
So do you think that played a role in his hiring, and do you think the Crafts did have influence in terms of Josh being named offensive coordinator?
I don't think it I don't think like I don't think that's been complete. I don't think that's completely fair to the Crafts, because I know I know what they offered Nick Caley last year. I think I've said this, $2.75 million a year. I know they've offered. I know Alex got something, I think, in the neighborhood of that. So, like, that's a good number. Now, it's not top of the league. Like, there have been coordinators who've been paid top of the league. Or the coordinators who are paid top of the league are well above that, but that's a good number.
What did Ben Johnson make last year?
So I heard he was top 3, which would probably put him over 5. Okay. So, like, you don't need to do that, but you got to give him something. And will they save a couple $1 million on it? Yes. Generally, the way some of this stuff can work is if you have a lot of times, like the ownership will give the head coach, a budget for the entire coaching staff. So where it could help someone like Mike is like, if we got to pay a little bit less, maybe I can pay a little bit more
to bring in
somebody else, right? Like, so if you got to bring in a senior assistant, or you got to lure somebody away from another team, if you see some depth in the staff, sometimes that can be where it works out, And look, like, owners have gotten, I don't know which C word I want to use here. Cheap, collusion. I don't know. Whatever C word you want to use. Like, this has become a bigger factor for them, where, like, even like there was a point over the last couple of years where in an owners meeting there were actually slides shown on how much dead money teams across the league are paying on coaching contracts. And, like, I think Carolina is probably the ultimate example of it, where they're still paying Matt Rule and Frank Reich, and Dave Canales is their head coach. You know what I mean?
Awesome. Yeah.
So, but I mean, like, I think what most coaches would tell you is, like, well, in an unstable business, that's what kind of keeps you afloat, is that you do have years left on your contract. Jerry Jones was one of the leaders of the pack on this, where it's been said that was one reason why Mike McCarthy was forced to go into his contract year. Is come hell or high water, Jerry Jones was not going to pay dead money on a contract. We see what sort of situation that created for the Cowboys.
Yes.
But this is something that teams keep track of, and I've even heard, like, where some assistants have been fired in the last couple of weeks, not here but in other places, because of owners saying, like, you got to shrink your staff. So. I know teams have become more sensitive to how much they're spending on coaching, which again is completely outrageous when you consider how much the league makes. And so I think in a lot of cases, like, where, and again, not specifically here, but a head coach can be given a budget for his staff, and then if he's able to save some money by taking somebody who's already being paid by another team, he can spend that money elsewhere.
All right, 617-779-0985. Want to get your thoughts on the defensive coordinator as well, but let's go to the phones now.
One thing really quick, too. I think the Crafts did have an influence on Josh. Like, they did. I think my sense is that Josh would have been their preferred hire. Yes.
So do you think that was said to Vrabel in the interview?
So I think
has to be.
Here's what I think.
It's got to be wide open.
This is not based on anything. I don't want this clipped or anybody to say, like, that I've heard. But this is just my feeling.
Louth has already clipped this, by the way.
My feeling on it, like, knowing what I know about Mike, is that if you try to shove something down Mike's throat, he will go the other way. And so
Good.
I think this was probably something that the Crafts had to tread lightly on, where they let them know, like they let them know their feelings on it. But I can't imagine that like they would have shoved Josh down Vrabel's throat and it have gone real well. So I think if they had an influence, they probably treaded lightly on it, and everybody winds up with that conclusion.
Same thing with Elliott Wolf. Similar situation.
That's a little different, but I think we went over this last week, like where I think Mike did his homework on Elliott, and Mike, they have common friends, and I think Chad Brinker in Tennessee is one that you can circle and say like that's a key one. As somebody who spent a lot of years with Elliott Wolf in Green Bay, the two of them, again, there's the Ohio connection that Brinker and Vrabel have. They spent a year together in Tennessee. I think put it this way, like the Titans just filled that GM job. I think there's a decent chance that Elliott Wolf would have been a front runner for that GM job if there were trouble here. You see what I'm saying? Like if there were Vrabel's trying to push him out, like then there would have been a soft landing for Elliott to go to Tennessee to be the Titans GM. I think the fact that he wasn't in the mix for that job at all tells you he's on solid ground, at least for now, in New England.
I mean, Mike's opening press conference, and the 37 times he dropped Elliott's name, and like, hey, we got an inside joke going, me and Elliott. Yeah, we need Elliott. It was like, wow, this really came to be fast.
Yeah, and I think Mike doesn't. I can't imagine Mike was doing any of that by accident like that.
No.
I just I think he was trying to make a point without saying it directly that like I'm gonna give this guy a chance.
Hey, if you like that clip, check out more videos from Zolak and Bertrand right here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.